Good. Hello, and he says, dropping his. Hello, I'm Ben. I'm the owner of our bookshop. Do hope you're well. Angela shouts, hi there, looking forward to this discussion. Hi from Leighton Buzzard. It's an honour to be having this event. We've got Emma and we've got Nicola, and they're going to be. I'm going to leave them to have a little chat for a while, for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then I'll return. Now, at that point, it's down to the audience and all of you who are watching live. You can submit some questions using the Q&A function, and I'll come back and assist Nicola and Emma with that, and then we've got ourselves a little event. So do enjoy the next hour, and thank you, Nicola, for turning up. I know you've just rushed here from another event, haven't you? And let me leave Emma and Nicola to have a chat for the next 40 minutes.
Lovely. Thanks, Ben. Ooh, is that the bookshop? Well, hello, everyone. My name's Nicola. I'm a journalist, writer, and public speaker. I'm from Shrewsbury, so I'm not from Tring. But Emma, are you actually from Tring?
My parents live in a village just outside called Marsworth.
Oh, lovely. Great. I think there's probably some people who are local to you. But yeah, you can use the chat function, and if you change the box to panelists and attendees, it means everyone can see what you're saying, because otherwise it's just us. So that's just a note for everyone. If you want to talk to other people, then you have to change it to panelists and attendees. So you can tell us where you're calling in from if you like. But Emma, congrats on the release of your third book. I was reading all about you, so I was like, wow, she's got 3 books out already and I haven't even got one. But yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
How does it feel to have a book out about being single?
Weird, uncomfortable, vulnerable, exposing. What other words could I think of? Yeah, I didn't really plan to write a book about this. My first book, this is why we were talking about cricket earlier. Ben is a big cricket fan. My first book was about cricket. Admittedly, my first book was a bit personal because it's called Following On, and the subtitle was hold on, what was the subtitle? It's about teenage obsession and terrible cricket, basically. That's a memoir of teenage obsession and terrible cricket. That's what it's called. And so even though I was actually writing about cricket and about this whole England team that used to be really terrible at cricket in the 90s, I was revisiting that time through the lens of my teenage experience. So, you know, my very first book, I got quite a lot of experience of writing, telling embarrassing stories about myself. Okay, that was my first book. So you could say that, like, I'd kind of like got over the hump of like writing embarrassing things about myself. And then my second book was about bluegrass music, but again, it was about me trying to become a bluegrass fiddler, having grown up as a classical violinist. And so again, it was kind of about the awkwardness of being this kind of bumbling Brit in the American South, and just, you know, confusing people, encountering people who really couldn't understand my accent as much as anything, certainly didn't understand my cultural background, and, you know, and sort of getting through that, spending about a year living over there. So I even though I've written 2 books that were actually about other subjects and were about things that I was passionate about, I had written, they were personal narratives. And then to come to this one, I actually meant to write about single women. I sort of originally had this idea that because it's my experience, because, you know, something I know about, hey, I'm a bit of an expert at being a single woman. I liked the idea of writing about it. I originally had the idea that I was going to write a book just called Spinster. That was gonna be the title. I thought, how cool will that look in a bookshop? The word spinster. And then my agent said, no, nobody's going to buy that book. Because spinster is a word that has such a huge stigma attached to it. And even though I was saying, yes, but that would sort of be the point, you know, I'll be a bit kind of like controversial, eye-catching, like, what do we think about spinsters? It's actually, that's why this ended up being a personal book, because it's actually still such a difficult and personal topic that you sort of do have to engage with it on a very personal level in order to tackle the sort of invisible stigmas that still exist. I think the thing about single women particularly, and again, like, I don't want to either try and speak for all single women. I certainly don't want to try and speak for single men, because I'm not one, but my understanding and experience, and certainly the experience of my single female friends, is that much though we live in a wonderful, inclusive, modern, feminist 21st century society, and thank the Lord for all of those things. I'm so grateful to be alive now, and I'm so grateful that I can be a single woman now and, like, live my best life, etc., etc. Hashtag. We are still living life in a world that it quite naturally expects us to become a partner. That's life. Hey, that's biology. That's as much part of the animal kingdom as it is part of 4 millennia of human civilization. And we naturally, I say it in the book, from the moment that we're born and our parents read us stories, we are part of a narrative that says you're going to find love, and you're going to, and when you become an adult, you will become one with one other person, probably, unless you're in a throuple, fine, you do you, but you will find somebody to love, or maybe you'll find somebody to love several times, and you will settle down, and you will have a family, and you will and that will be your mark of adulthood. That's how you'll know you're there. Because you'll have all these experiences that are common to all humans, and you'll nod your head wisely when people talk about how annoying their husband or their wife or whatever is, and you'll all talk about how tired you are because your kids keep you up at night. And if those things don't happen to you, then you're really missing out on life. Like, you're really missing, like, the key journey of life. You've sort of slipped and fallen off the bridge, and we're really sorry for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, isn't there? And it's funny because I have a lot of friends now who have little children, and I can already see those messages, because it is the books they're reading and the films they watch, but it's also the little things that people say, like, oh, one of them's got a son and the other one's got a daughter, so it's like, oh, maybe they'll get married when they're older, and it's like the assumption, one, that they'll be straight, two, that they'll want to actually get married, because also plenty of couples don't actually do that. And yeah, it's just that messaging from the off, like, oh, on your wedding day to like a little girl. So that messaging is there from the start, isn't it? Which I think just makes you feel like you're doing it wrong.
It is. And my book isn't a kind of, there is nothing, I don't think my book is a manifesto in any way. It's a collection of funny stories about me that ends with me not getting married, because that was the thing that I thought would be really different, is to write a book about singleness that isn't a book about dating. There is some dating in there. I've had the internet dating experience. I've got some funny stories in there for you about my failures with men. Don't worry, they're there. But really, that is only one part of the single experience, but it's the part that culture fixates on, because for all these reasons, and because that's been the evolution of the kind of the single woman in fiction or literature or TV or film or whatever. We've evolved from the Victorian spinsters who, well, even before that, the kind of the 17th and 18th century old maids who, were depicted on stage as being bitter and twisted or desperate, and, who were just like just horrible, grotesque caricatures, to the, to the sort of tragic romantics of your Charlotte Bronte and Jane Austen characters, and and it's really sad because basically if you don't get married you're going to be poor forever, which was a real thing, and then we've kind of moved on and got to the wonderful liberation of the 20th century characters like Bridget Jones and Carrie Bradshaw, but it's still all about, their stories are all about how and when are they going to meet their other half. They can, even Lena Dunham's girls, it's like you can be as liberated and as autonomous as you like, but your story is still ends when you find your person. And I found that with even with books by women I absolutely, I mean, not just admire, like I put them on a massive pedestal, be it Caitlin Moran or Dolly Alderton or Elizabeth Day, writers I love, brilliant storytellers. But, and I'm sure this is as much their publishers telling them to do this as anything else, but, the story is still like, here's all the funny things that happened to me on the way to me finding the love of my life. And if that hasn't happened to me and I don't know if it's going to happen to me, I'm not saying I don't want it to happen to me, really do, but it hasn't, and I have no control over that. And that is the experience of being single, is I am living my life and I have a different life to my friends, but my life is definitely not all about some sort of limbo period that's waiting for this thing to happen. And I think the thing about absorbing all that culture is absorbing all these narratives of what society tells you. I'm not banging a drum and saying we should not be telling having princesses in fairy tales or whatever. I'm not on that bandwagon. I love stories and I love romance. Do
romance too.
Yes, do not end rom-coms for me. I would die without rom-coms. So I'm not saying let's not have this. In what my book was entirely was me, for the first time in my life, actually interrogating what does it mean to be me as a single person, because I've internalized all of these messages and I have never noticed what effect they've had on me. I've never questioned them. I think in the book, again, I sort of say I've never been scared of being single. I've never been sad about being single, because I have always assumed that I am pre-married. Because I think unless you have really low self-esteem, and I'm really, that's an awful thing, and I'm really sorry when people do, and my heart bleeds for people who feel that they might struggle to be loved, and who really desperately do feel lonely, and that is an awful experience, and one that I would hope if I ever saw it, either in friends or people I didn't know, that I would try and do something to help out with, but that has not been my experience, and so I have made all sorts of other assumptions about my life, and it's only when I realized that other people don't really see me as I am, because they're coming with these filters that we all have, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you think I'm a bit sad and lonely, and that's when you get those awkward conversations, isn't it?
Which is how you start the book, actually. So you start, and honestly, I was reading that and I was like, oh god, I've been there so many times. Then you're at like a grown-up party because there's children and other adults. and yeah, you're there. I mean, actually, once I was the only person invited to my friend's little boy's birthday party who didn't have a child. So they were like, where's your child? And I was like, I'm the guest of honor. He specifically asked for me to be there, so I was like, I had to turn up for him. He was only little, but yeah, there's so much in the book that's really relatable, and also what you just said as well, because I feel the same. Like, I don't want to wait for something to happen, like to live my life. And that's what my newsletter's about as well. It's just like, you know, I want to enjoy the moment while I've got it. Like, I need to enjoy my life right now. And why should I feel like, oh, I'm living a half life because I haven't found the other half yet? I just hate that phrase. So on the topic of that, would you say that you advocate for single positivity, or are you sort of more neutral, would you say?
That's really interesting, because I again, because this wasn't kind of I did a lot of research about history, because I thought I was going to write a book about spinsters in history. And I didn't particularly do a lot of reading before I wrote the book about what, you know, the current kind of trends, the current culture. You know, I used to work for a lifestyle magazine. I used to be the deputy editor of Observer magazine, so I have a lot of experience of kind of writing about trends, and I know, you know, I've heard single positivity without ever having really thought, oh, is that me? Am I single positive? Ditto. Oh my goodness, the one that really wound me up, and I'm really sorry to say this.
I know what you're going to say.
You know what I mean? It's self-partnered, yeah. And I only say that because Emma Watson, Lord love her, I think she's amazing. I mean, I want to be her. But it is very hard. It is very hard for somebody. It's very hard to take from somebody who's 10 years younger than you to start with, and who's kind of, you know, multimillionaire famous actress who was actually dating when she called herself that. And I love, you know, fair play to her. She was doing it for the single lady. She was doing it out of a really good place to be exactly as you've said, single positive. So actually, you know, I should applaud her for that. But it's a very personal thing, isn't it, being single? And it is a thing where you are constantly comparing yourself to others, and then suddenly it was like, am I really in the same world as Emma Watson? I don't think I am. Even though I like her, you know, she was saying she likes going and she likes being on her own and eating dinner on her own and reading a book. And I was like, well, you know, I like that too. I've been doing it a lot longer. And I suspect I will be doing it a lot longer. Yeah, so yeah. I find the kind of, yeah, I don't feel like I'm a natural follower of a movement. Let's put it that way.
I like that. That's a good answer. Yeah, it was funny for me, because I launched my newsletter just purely because I was fed up with everything out there for single people. And then suddenly Emma Watson said all that. And then suddenly there was all these articles about single positivity. And I write about the single experience, not necessarily just positive. Mine's like sort of highs and lows, and so I felt like, oh no, I'm not really fitting in their box. And you know, I had people emailing me being like, I thought you were only about being single and you just want to be single for the rest of your life. It's disappointing to see that you would like to find a partner eventually. And I'm like, oh no, like I'm not living up to the label.
I think that is sort of my issue with it, is that, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's a cause, and it's like you've you know, or if you're saying that being single is cool, you've got to, like, you know, really commit to it. Be single forever, which is just like, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
the whole point of my book is like, this is what real life is like, people. This is like, life is not black and white, it's nuanced. There are days as a single person where you think, this is the bomb, this is the best way to live. I am so lucky, I'm so glad that I don't have to you know, listen to a husband telling me you know, things I really don't care about. And I'm so glad I don't have to, like, do 4 times the amount of laundry I currently have to do because I have children. And then there are days when, you know, you can't do the zip up at the back of your dress and you think, why, oh why do I not live with somebody? Because I'm never going to get out this door unless I dislocate my shoulder and manage to do this zip up. And that's life. That's the fun of life. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's real. And also, you know, people change their minds all the time. So yeah, you know, and exactly, you might hate it one moment. I actually was, you know, I'm fine being single, but when the pandemic hit, I suddenly was like, damn, I wish I had one of those husband things who had to stick with me through this. But sadly I didn't, although I did relate in your book because you went to stay with your sister. I actually went to stay with my parents, so it's like there was echoes of that when you talked about living in the attic and feeling like sort of weird governess. That made me laugh. So and also related, because I was like, after 4 months at my parents, I was like, okay, I really need to move house now. This is getting weird. Because we were sort of becoming like, I don't know, sort of old married couple, but 3 of us. it was strange times. So actually, talking about parents, I really loved what you said about your mum and how you realised that actually she was the one who sort of helped enable you to live an independent life and be this independent woman. And I was wondering if you'd be able to talk a bit about that and yeah, just expand.
I mean, I say I'm independent. I'm sitting in my mum's house, right? So not that independent. She's sitting upstairs, almost certainly watching this as we're just carrying on. So, yeah. No, I mean, it is. So I think one of the interesting things about not settling with somebody and not moving into not creating your own nuclear family is that for a lot of people, that's when they properly detach from their parents. You know, I think maybe psychologists call that a thing, I don't know. Attachment, detachment, and also, you know, it's another opportunity to start again. So we have these so often in life, these chances to like re-establish our identities. We've all done it. You know, you do it when you get a new job and you get to start over with a fresh bunch of colleagues, and you think, oh, I'm not this time, I'm not going to be the one that everyone takes the mick out of for, you know, eating smelly cheese or whatever it is, like, you know, for always being the last into the meeting. You know, I'm going to be, I can go into this new job and I can be like the confident, cool one. Yeah. And actually, I think opportunities to do that, like on a grand scale, are pretty few and far between in everybody's lives. And I think they're really precious. Yeah, and we all know that like, you know, one of the both wonderful but also most infuriating things about your original family is that they think that they know you better than anyone else. I mean, maybe they do. I think in my case they do, but you know, they're like, we know who you are because, you know, we've seen you since you were a baby, we watched you grow up, but you are only that person around them, or it's very hard to be more than that person, because, you know, it's the thing that happens when you go home for Christmas, right? You basically become a teenager again, and you could be like 80 years old and you go home to your 105-year-old parents' house and you are an 80-year-old grumpy, sulky teenager. And I mean, I really hope that I have got better at not doing that, especially having spent quite a lot of time with my parents this last year. But I just think that you know, I have sort of missed out on that opportunity to be seen through somebody else's eyes. You know, I think that's what a partner would probably have done for me, that I've had to really get from my friends in a different way. And it has been a journey to listen to what my friends see, to listen to what my friends say about me, and to believe what they see in me, and to understand that I am all of these people. And I think that's why I've sort of called the book Self-Contained, is because it's you know, I mean, not to like quote Walt Whitman or anything, but you know, I am legion, I contain multitudes, and we all do, and I've been really lucky in some regard in that I've been able to travel a lot, partly through my job, partly just because I got a lot braver at traveling solo, and once I did that I fell in love with it, and I was like, right, this is a cool thing to do. And that gives you that experience of a blank slate, and you have to basically, for me, I've had to kind of overcome the idea that that other side that is not in my, you know, network, the things that I experience when I'm not in my, you know, wonderful cozy home with my, whether it's with my sister and my brother-in-law, or whether it's with friends who've known me since I was at school, or whatever it is, coming to accept that, like, actually the experiences you have later in life where you go out on your own and you try something else. I don't think I was even trying. I think I just experienced something else, and I got to like be somebody else when I was traveling in America, or when I was trying to play bluegrass fiddle, or whatever it is. But those experiences are real. They're not fraudulent. They're not like, oh, I'm putting on a persona, because that's not the persona that I had as a 14-year-old. No, we you know, we develop, we change, and we can be multiple things at once. Humans are really complicated, and so one of the things that sort of came really naturally in writing the book was that I, even though, you know, there is a chronological narrative and a sort of overall story arc, it came very easily to write each chapter in quite a self-contained way, because they were about different parts of my experience. Often those parts of an experience were tied to a specific person or tied to a specific time, and it felt really good to acknowledge that, and to have the freedom to explore those different aspects, and tell stories in that way. Because the one thing that absolutely failed when I sat down to write the book, and I can tell you, because when I actually when I started planning the book, I was in this room, and I'm just gonna turn this. I'm going to turn this so that you can see this wardrobe, right? Can you see this wardrobe?
Yeah.
There you go. On that wardrobe, that was where I put my post-it. This is where I put my.
I was going to ask you about the writing process. You have.
So what I do is I have loads of themes. I have, you know, various stories I want to tell. I have a vague idea of like structure, and so I put down notes, having written loads of notes and, you know, mind mapped all over the place. I get post-its and I write themes, and then I put them up. And if you ever watch, if you want to see what this looks like, go to the penultimate episode of I May Destroy You by Michaela Cole, which is still on BBC One iPlayer, because that's about a writer, and it was just the most extraordinary thing to see her, like, in the penultimate episode of that series, suddenly having a creative blitz and putting her novel on the wall, and she was doing it with post-it notes in exactly the way I do it. I was like, oh, I'm not mad. I'm a real writer. This is what other people do.
Get some post-it notes. I've been doing a lot of mind mapping because I'm writing a memoir as well. So like, I've been doing a lot of mind mapping, but I haven't done the post-its. So obviously, it's
really helpful for structuring. And what I did was, this was before I really had a handle on what was, you know, how the book was going to work. I was still trying to write the kind of classic chick lit fiction arc, which is basically, you know, and everybody knows it, it's the same as the kind of 3-act movie or whatever, you know. Girl starts off, protagonist, but in this case female, starts off with thinking everything's fine, which was me, not thinking about my singleness, being in my 30s, having a whale of time, and then something happens, crisis, which makes, which throws all that into doubt, and then you come out of that, and basically the resolution is you find a new happiness. And normally, obviously in the romantic arc, that's, you're trying to, all the way through your book, you're trying to bring people together, you're trying to create this story where everything's going to be fine because these two people are going to find each other. And so for me, I was like, well, I suppose that's my friends, isn't it? So I was trying to like force this book into some sort of arc where it was like, well, and then I found these amazing friends, and that was, that solved all my problems. But the fact is, I've had amazing friends all my life, and they've been different friends at different points of my journey, which everyone knows that it's like, it's very rare. You are very lucky if you have a kind of broad city relationship with some amazing best female friend who you've known since you were school kids, and you're each other's, I mean, that's a kind of romance in itself, isn't it? You're each other's other half. You've got the little necklace that joins together, and you each wear half of it. And I've had friends in my life who have been that close to me, but they've come in and out of my life. Some of them moved countries. I still love them dearly, but they can't help me out of a jam tomorrow. They're certainly not around to zip up my dress, so it was impossible to force a real life into that structure. And that's why I ended up saying, well, no, I think every chapter is going to end up being really about a different relationship in my life. And it's not going to end, it's not going to end up with like, there's this one set of friends who really aim to define my future happiness. That's not what it's about.
No, but that's why it's so good, because it's like you're literally changing the narrative. So and isn't that what we need? That's what I was going to ask, why do you think there is the stigma? Do you think the more things we have like your book, that will help change the narrative, literally change the stigma?
I think so. I mean, having been a little bit kind of having been a little bit unenthusiastic about the single positivity movement, I know that's what the aim is, and that's a very worthy aim. And it's really, do you know what's really funny to me is that I'm actually, and I say this in the book, I'm actually quite an old-fashioned person, like with quite old-fashioned values. I'm quite traditionalist, and I would say quite an old-fashioned British, like, we're talking Edwardian sort of sensibilities when it comes to sharing and talking about things, which makes it unbelievably ironic, I know, that I have written 3 books that have a memoir kind of style to them, because but it's also why I write, it's why I use humor, because it's an absolute defense. It's like, I will tell you the story and we'll laugh about it together, and that's as far as you're going to get. So actually writing this book was really hard, because it was, you had to be very honest. You had to let people in a lot further than you did before. But I think in that kind of, there's a bit of me that's not really on board for like being like, we all need to kind of, I do think we all need to understand each other, but also I do think we live in a culture that is all about understanding each other and is very, very much about sharing how we all feel. And I feel like sometimes I know too much about how other people feel, and I wish they would keep more of it to themselves. And so I feel quite conflicted about that. When you say, do we need to change narrative? I'm like, yeah, probably, but like, isn't the narrative just naturally going to change on its own? And do we need to kick up a song and dance about it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've sort of written this because it was a bit of fun as much as anything. I mean, I say that, everybody who knows me will be like, Emma, you are not fun when you're writing. You're really miserable, and you know. But I don't want it to. I definitely didn't want it to be too kind of like serious.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. It's there's loads of funny stuff in it. I mean, there's also some really moving parts in it, which sort of, I guess, took me by surprise. And but I also think like it's the kind of book that people in relationships could read, and then they'd be like, and it'll make them think a little bit, because it is accessible, it's funny, and it's a really good read. It's not preachy, and it's not being like all people in relationships are terrible, and that kind of thing. So it's the kind of book that I could say to my married friends, you should read this book. It's good, and it'll help you understand more. Maybe. So yeah, that's why I sort of asked that question, I guess, because hopefully it'll get people talking, maybe.
I mean, I'll be honest, I have a couple of people, friends of mine, not necessarily friends who were in the book, but who were worried that they might recognize themselves, especially in the first chapter, which you talked about, which is the one that happens at a christening. And it the whole book opens with the conversation that every single person has had. And to be honest, like, since almost every single person has been single, every one of us has at some stage been single. I think everybody has had this conversation where you're at a party and basically you talk to a stranger and they're just looking desperately for some small talk, so they say, so are you here with anyone, you married? And you go, no. And then it's like
how am I going to answer this question?
Because it's just like, that person now feels they have to like backpedal, or they have to tell you that it's one, like, that's wonderful, like you probably have a really amazing life, and I'm really not judging you right now, but also, like, if you want to be in love, that's also fine, and like I definitely think it will happen for you. I've never met you before, but I'm sure you're going to fall in love, like, just as soon as you want to, or probably maybe you'll fall in love as soon as you stop thinking about it, because that's the other thing that happens. All of these things are absolutely but that is that. And I know, like, a couple of friends have responded to that and been like, I'm you've made me really reflect on, like, what I said to single people or whatever. And I'm like,
I've had that with my newsletter, because loads of my coupled up friends read it, and then they're like, oh no, I've realized that when I spoke to someone who was a single parent, for example, I asked the worst possible question. I'm like, it's okay, but it's good that you're educating yourself. Do put your questions in the Q&A box if you have them, and then Ben's going to come back and ask. I actually did ask on my Instagram if anyone had any questions, and a couple of people did send them in, so may as well ask those ones now while we wait for the other questions. Somebody asked, what's the most joyful thing about being single to you, for you?
Oh, that's really nice. What's the most, you'd think I would have an absolute, like, oh yeah, I've totally got an answer for that, because I've just written an entire book about being single. What is the my ability to be spontaneous. And the reason that's joyful for me, there are other people for whom that is not joyful. So one of my friends who I write about in the book, called Tessa, she loves it, because basically it turns out that every time I talk about this book I end up talking about Tessa. And the reason that happens, I think, partly is because she and I are very different people. And it's just a reminder that being single is not a character trait. We are not a homogenous bunch of people. And so for me, just I am the type of person who I just love the idea that I could that a friend might call me now, even like, basically, I mean, I'm so sorry, Nicola, if a friend called me now and was like, do you want to have a drink at the pub that's just on the other side of the canal, I'd be like, yeah, let me get off this Q&A as quickly as I can so that I can come join you. That's the kind of person I am. Like, I'm social, I'm extrovert, but I really like spontaneity. Sorry, I keep touching my eye because I've got a funny little twitch in my eye. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not secretly crying. But yeah, I love that ability to be spontaneous. And to me, that's what, so I spent most of my adult life in London. And to me, that's what the essence of city life felt like it should be. And so I was very, very disappointed to discover, even in my 20s, you know, even when everything was still supposed to be really fun, that people got themselves really booked up, and that you couldn't make a date with them for, like, you know, less than 4 weeks in advance. And also that as soon as they had a couple, or part of a couple, then that was like loads of their diary sort of filled up, because not only were they going on dates with their other half, but then they were also hanging out with their friends, you know, their other half's friends, and you weren't invited to that. So so that's what I really love about it. But I do know that there are single people who do not care about the spontaneity thing, and really would like to plan, and that includes my friend Tessa.
I'm with you. I love being spontaneous, so that's probably one of the best things for me actually as well. So I think Ben is going to come back, so we've got some questions.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm coming.
Hi, Ben.
I was too busy enjoying the event. What's going on?
A good sign.
You are, Emma, you are pure bonkers. It's fantastic. I
was just honestly thinking, Emma, you should do stand-up. So funny.
Well, weirdly, and Nicola won't even know this, but I organise a comedy course. I organise a comedy training as part of another world that I organise. So anyway, Emma came in the shop earlier today and signed a load of books, some of which you're all going to receive. And I was telling her about my weird links with the comedy world, because, you know, playing in the Golf Society, playing with Dominic Holland next week. But anyway, listen, let's do some questions. Charlotte has asked, what was your favourite part to write in your book?
I do have an answer to this one, because I thought about this the other day.
I should hope so too, though. I mean, come on.
The chapter, there was a chapter that I wrote. There were two chapters basically that I wrote that were my favourite. One of them is about my sister's wedding day, and that was a joy to write, because genuinely my sister's wedding day was the best day of my life. I mean, it was the best day of my life then. Since then, England have won the 2019 World Cup by the barest of margins. So it's no longer my best day of my life, but at the time it was. And so reliving that day, and I wrote that the whole chapter is just about that one day, and so there was a lovely easy, boundaries. It was like, I know what to write. All I've got to do is sit down and just recount that day, because I know that it's all going to come out in a very natural, easy way. And that chapter wrote itself, and it was lovely to remember, and that made me really happy. But then my favorite chapter,
by the way, where you said everyone kept coming up to you and complimenting you, and you were like, am I looking particularly hot? Are they just worried that my younger sister's got married and I don't have anyone with me? yeah, you can't really tell. They're like, is this pity praise? I don't know. I'll take it anyway. Take it.
But yeah, my favorite chapter that I wrote, weirdly, was I think it's the penultimate chapter, and it's about lockdown. And I think partly I felt a huge amount of relief that I got past some really difficult chapters. There's some, as Nicola says, there's some quite like poignant, difficult stuff that I had to write, and it was not enjoyable to write at all. And I was just like, oh, thank the Lord, I'm out of that. And then I wrote this chapter, and I'm not going to talk about it too much, because I'm sort of hoping I don't want to literally spoil it by giving away anything. But it was just like, there was a freedom in writing that chapter that I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm having so much fun. I felt like I was writing in a totally different voice, and I was flying when I wrote that chapter. I think I wrote it in a day. And the funny thing is that I didn't change it. I read it back, and I was like, no, that's great. That'll do.
Perfect. Nicola, you obviously, having read it, is there a favourite bit for you?
Well, I've probably just said it actually, the bit where the wedding, that just made me laugh so much because I related. So I think that was my favourite bit. I mean, there's loads of favourite bits, but I won't spoil any more. I've probably mentioned too much that's in the book, but hopefully everyone here's already bought their copy.
Yes, we haven't. Emma's been signing them today, and actually I've got another batch arriving tomorrow. So we're a bit slow in getting them sent, so I do apologise to everyone who's watching. If you want the personalised messages, actually, do send an email back to me, and actually Emma could personalise them tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to come in tomorrow or Wednesday morning?
Wednesday. I'm going to come in Wednesday.
I'm in the shop Wednesday, so do come in then. So we can talk cricket more. Let's Shirley's question. I'm going to skip that one and go to Charlotte. What's your next book about? I'll come back to you, Shirley, but don't worry. But what's your next book about?
That's so. My agent would very much like to know, but. As I sort of said, I've had this really weird, writing career that, I wrote a book about cricket, I wrote a book about bluegrass music, and I've written a book about being single. And you could say none of those three things have anything in common, except for me, because I was the link between all those three subjects, and I was writing about them from my perspective. But yes, in terms of how an agent or a publisher would like to, build you as an author and, create a persona of you, I've done it all wrong. You should not do that. I should have written another sports book after I wrote the cricket book. I should probably never have written the bluegrass book in the first place, because it was never going to sell. But I don't care, because it won awards. So boo, boo sucks to everyone.
I had a customer come in on Saturday looking for a bluegrass book. I had no idea. Honestly, we don't stop. I
hope you still got their name or number, because we can send them one of those.
And I was like, there's not a lot of call for bluegrass music. So.
May I recommend Wayfaring Stranger, travel book of the year.
I really want to read it after what you've said. I don't know anything about that kind of music, but from the way you've sold it sounds hilarious.
I mean, yeah, it's very much a book about bluegrass for people who don't know anything about bluegrass. So yes, you are all ideal readers of that book. And believe me, if any of you buy and read that book, you will be among very elite company. But it did win Travel Book of the Year this year, and then it was named one of Newsweek's Travel Books of the Decade last year. Wow. So it's all right. It's like a decent book. It just nobody's ever heard of it.
Can't argue with that.
The question was, what am I going to write about next? And I was going to say that I think I'm going to make my agent very happy, because I actually would like to write something that actually relates to this book, which is I would like to write about friendship, because I feel like that was the next obvious subject after writing about being single. Was really, this book ends up being a book about friendship and a celebration of friendship, but I am fascinated by the different kinds of friendship that exist, and the different patterns of friendship, and the different codes of friendship that we have, and I would very much like to get into that.
That would be great.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like a lot of work, I have to say, from everything else. Right, Shirley, do you have married friends who seem to feel superior because they have found their partner but are jealous of your lifestyle and varied social life?
I have friends who have out and out told me that they are jealous of my lifestyle and my social life. I mean, I have friends who basically say, I got it wrong, you got it right. And I don't know how their husbands or children feel about the fact that they say that, but it's like, I don't think I would be friends with people who felt superior to me. So I don't think I actually have any friends who feel superior to me, because that friendship wouldn't last. But I definitely have friends who have expressed envy.
Very good. An anonymous attendee: as a single person, do you find it harder to make friends as you get older? I suspect Emma has no problem at all finding friends. I met her for the first time today. I think she's amazing.
I thought you were Bezies.
I want to be her friend.
I mean, I basically want to be everybody's friend. I love making friends. I mean, I don't know if you can tell that from this call, but basically it's sort of similar to the spontaneity thing. It's just who I am. I get so much energy from other people, and I love making connections with other people. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've had such a weird variety of things that I'm interested in, because I don't know whether the things to me are, I like the fact that I'm into a lot of different things, because it means that you can connect, however superficially, with a lot of different people. One of the things I love about being a journalist is interviewing people, and you might have to become an instant expert in that person or their field of industry or whatever it is, in the 3 hours you've got to research them before you go into it. And the older I've got, actually, in sort of specific relation to as I get older, actually the older I've got, the better I've got at that, and the more confident I've got at it. I used to I probably always had these instincts, but I used to second guess them, and not just second guess them, but I just used to assume that like nobody would really be interested in me. Like I was trying to impress other people all the time, because I didn't think that I was interesting enough, on my own as a person. And one of the things, again, like I come back to solo travel, like one of the things that having to rely, when you go traveling on your own, it's just you. Like there's nothing else there. If people are either going to be friends with you or they're not, like you can't, there's nothing else to fall back on. And I think that's what's given me so much confidence, is discovering that the world is just full of people who want to be friends with you. And that makes me really happy.
I love that.
That's good. That is gorgeous, isn't it? We've got a few people using the chat function for question, which is entirely fine. I've spotted you. Maria Burgos, which of your 3 books have you most enjoyed writing? I suspect the cricket one has to come fairly high up there, but just because of your passion for cricket. But yeah, no, you tell us.
Well, that's a really good question. Actually, in terms of writing, I think the second one I enjoyed the most, and I tell you for why. The second one was really like, writing that book was what I had always wanted to write. I didn't actually plan to write the cricket book. I wrote the cricket book because I couldn't get anybody to buy the idea for the bluegrass book, because bluegrass books don't sell. Apparently that is actually a true thing now. And in the end, a lovely one of my dear friends, Rob Biddulph, who's a children's author, who's actually, his works are up in the window. So Rob and I, we used to be bezies at work. He was the art director at Observer magazine. I was the deputy editor. We sat back to back, and do you know what we did all day? We G-chatted each other all day. And we just we just spent the whole day making each other laugh on G-chat. I've just realized this is being recorded, and I'm like, I hope my old boss never sees this. But he was the one who said to me, like, I had been working on my sample chapters and everything about this bluegrass book, and it was just not getting anywhere. And he was having the same issue with his very first children's book. Same thing. I guess it was Blown Away, maybe, but he just could not get a buyer for it. And so he stopped. He was like, this is going to drive me nuts. I'm going to go insane. It's making me so miserable. So he stopped, and he just started working on another one and just carried on. And then in the end, he sold all his books, and he's really famous.
Well, weirdly, my last event was Rob Biddulph.
There you go.
I did a stream into about 15 schools last week.
I should have been paying more attention to Rob's Instagram feed. There you go. So I did, and I said, well, what would I write a book about? That, he said, well, you love cricket. Why wouldn't you write about cricket? Rob, by the way, does not like cricket. He's an Arsenal fan. He thinks cricket's the most boring sport in the world. But he was my friend, and he was like, well, what about cricket? And as soon as he said that week, I fell asleep one night. I was falling asleep one night, and the entire idea for the entire cricket book, chapter structure and everything, came into my head as I was falling asleep. I literally just had to get a notebook from the side of my bed, try and stay awake for about half an hour just to write down all everything. And I was like, that's the book. And then I sold that book within a fortnight. I got an agent and a publisher just like that, because it was the right book, and it was at the right time. So that was great. But writing that book was quite hard, because I had never written a book before, and I didn't know that writing a book actually makes you really miserable. Now I know, and everybody else who's written a book says the same thing, and it's like, oh, it's torture. And you go through this massive emotional roller coaster, and you spend a lot of time thinking that you're the worst writer in the world, and you're just, you should just stop and quit embarrassing yourself. And you can feel like that for months, and I didn't know that, and so that was quite that was exhausting. But then I wrote the book, and that won an award. That won Wisdom Book of the Year award, and it got loads and loads of lovely reviews, and people compared it to Fever Pitch, and I was like, hey, I'm a writer, this is a real thing. And so I took that confidence into the Bluegrass book, and the Bluegrass book got the deal because of the cricket book. And really, as I say, the Bluegrass book was always just a way to go and play bluegrass fiddle and to bum around in North Carolina for a year, which is what I did. And so I had an amazing year of, the as you would see if you read the book, if you became one of the 10 people to read the book, you would see that actually that was quite an emotional and difficult and exhausting and trying experience too, because it's very hard for a classical violinist to become a bluegrass fiddler. So I'm not saying I was happy every second of the day, but I was alive in a way that I was just alive in a totally new way, and I experienced totally new things, and it made me really happy. So then when I came to write the book, sorry, I am answering the question just in such a roundabout way, but that's classic. That is my Thursday, my Monday quiz friends, who I said I can't quiz with you until I finish this
I love it.
But there they are anyway.
Meanwhile,
so now I'm
we could
finding my way back to do.
We could join the quiz, but I bet you.
I mean, honestly, we won the quiz last week, and it was a big return to form for us. So that's probably why they are like desperately calling me. No, sorry, I was finally going to answer this question, which was that essentially writing that bluegrass book was my favorite, because I was sat in a room recalling one of the best years of my life.
Yeah.
Like that, there you go. That was that one, because I was basically telling stories that made me very, very happy.
Was the third book easier to write then, after both those experiences?
I'm much more confident in my writing, in the sense of I sort of know that there are going to be periods where I hate my writing, and that's I know that's what it is. I'm gonna absolutely overstep the bounds of decency now, but the women on this call aren't gonna mind. It's like when you get really upset before you have your period, and then your period comes along and you're like, oh, that's why I was crying for 2 days and I thought like my life wasn't worth living. And then eventually, like at some stage you were mature.
I'm chuckling like I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, at some stage you are mature enough and you have a good enough memory that after one day of crying your eyes out, you go, oh, I probably got my period. And it's the same experience writing a book.
Okay.
I have to say,
I'm very much in my writing's terrible. I need to go and like change jobs completely. And why do I think I can do this? So that was perfect advice for me. So thank you.
What I would add is, whilst you're giving the last answer, I was quickly went on my wholesaler's website and I've ordered a copy of Wayfaring Stranger. So that's going to be stocked in our shop as of Wednesday.
Yay! So when that person who wanted a bluegrass book eventually, comes back, having not found one anywhere else, then they will be very happy.
I mean, I could have ordered something for him, but he was only passing through Tring, which is slightly annoying. Which is like,
I feel like maybe my next book is going to be a quest to find that man.
Yeah.
The sort of Dave Gorman style, like I want to find
the one bluegrass fan in the country. Yes.
On Twitter. Were you in Tring the other day?
Yes, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna find this person.
Like with all good things, these things have to come to an end, and it's very annoying to have to do that. So, Emma, we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you so much for doing this. Nicola, thank you very much for your time in putting this together. All the rest of the audience, all the audience, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to those who submitted questions. We've got a load of events coming up. Let me do a quick plug. Thursday, we've got Tom Bradby, the ITV News presenter. He's doing an event. I'm interviewing him. I've I'm only 100 pages into this tome, which is I'm having sleepless nights about that. Elizabeth McNeil on Saturday, and then I've just listed Dominic Holland on our website as well, so he's doing next week. So good. That's it. Emma, thank you so much.
Great. I'll go and get quizzing.
Go and join. Yeah, I mean, you're so clever. You'll win it from two rounds behind.
I've just popped a link to a piece that Emma wrote for my newsletter on Sunday. So there's a direct link there if anyone wants to read.
Grab it quick. The moment I press end, it obviously disappears. So if you need to grab it, I've also stuck the YouTube channel where all our films, all our interviews and videos. We've done around 100 interviews in lockdown, so that will be found all there. And this one will be there. I might actually put it up there tonight because there's one member of the audience who are desperate to have it, who couldn't make it. So Emma, thank you once more. Nicola, thank you very much. And audience, bye bye guys.
Bye.